could have avoided a lot of frustration when you, for example, talk to accountants and you negotiate a budget with people who do not understand what you're actually talking about. They're financially driven. They have no idea about technology. After being a finance person, before that it was rather confrontational. We try to play games along the lines of, we try to over budget because we know we have to give you something, and so we give you something, we're still happy with the budget that we got. And because you cannot verify it, you are ignorant and we are happy. These times are over, and they're also childish. And if the projects get larger, you have to stop to doing such things. So after being a finance person, I changed my behavior completely from confrontational to collaborative. Because at the end of the day, we are still in the same company, we still have the same stakeholders, and it should be our task to do the best for the company, not for my ego. And so being a finance person, I proactively went to the finance people and to the accountants and told them this is the thing that we do. And I prepared that a little bit by trying to be in their shoes and anticipate what kind of questions would they ask me anyway. And then started to negotiate along the lines of, I know that you need to insist on this and this. When we look at markets, you need to admit that, for example, interest rates are much lower. And so from that moment onwards, I felt we made better decisions in terms of something that's feasible. So my projects were still feasible, and we could do it within the financial constraints that were given to them. I mean, that was also imposed to them. So we created that win-win situation relatively quickly. And then when we went into the meeting where the decision was made, basically the decision maker said, well, if the two of you have already agreed on this, I sign off. So we had much faster, more efficient decision-making processes because I learned my lesson. I think it was my mistake to avoid technical arrogance and instead engage with people, stakeholders in that project in a constructive way in order to make better decisions, and it also went faster. So that was, and once you have experienced this, you will do it all the time. But it's unusual. Doesn't Yes, it does happen. That's why you have a due diligence obligation. That means trust is good, control is better. So you need to check the numbers. You need to make some kind of verifications whether the assumptions that underlie the business proposal are justified. That's your job as a venture capitalist. And you always have the right to ask for more information. And then sometimes, and again, that brings us down to professionalism. Sometimes some venture capitalists have unreasonable demands. So, for example, I recall a meeting with a co-investor. I don't want to give you the name because you know it, you know them. They asked for 3 years audited accounts for a startup business. That is unreasonable. There is no such thing. And so I basically terminated the meeting after 5 minutes because, when you have these kind of unreasonable demands, then you better walk off because you're wasting your time. And I acted on behalf of the entrepreneur, but if you have a co-investor like this, they will continue to create problems. So in this case, I remember we walked off. So the trust is important. In this case, the entrepreneur said, Frank, please see this co-investor. I will not come along. I trust your judgment. If you think that this is a good co-investor, it's in your own interest. It's also my interest, so I trust your judgment. And so we did. It didn't work, and we just walked away. Have they hidden data? Of course they do. Of course they do. Sometimes they also don't have it. Fair enough, then I have to develop some kind of workarounds. I have to write an investment proposal to my investment committee. They may come back to me, ask more questions, and I go back to the entrepreneur. The last thing I want is really to make them upset. I have no such interest. If they can't answer me, then they should say, look, Frank, we don't have the data. Fair enough, no problem. Then we go to secondary data. There's always a workaround. Where there's a will, there's a way. Do they do it intentionally is the key question, actually. And sometimes, yes, they do it intentionally, sometimes because they are afraid to lose the financing. And you should, as a VC, you should address that it doesn't help you if you hide anything from me. I'm going to find out anyway. You know, Singapore in particular is a small place. A couple of phone calls, we knew actually a lot about the management team. We had fund of fund investments, so we could do technical validation relatively quickly, 72 hours. So we could actually give within 5 days some kind of indication are we interested or not. I read a lot of research that shows that women are actually better prepared for that. Their thinking is more comprehensive, broader, and I think they are naturally better prepared to integrate, to empathize. These are all things that maybe their mother instincts brings with them, and men don't have that. And so I'm a firm believer that we would benefit from more women in the workforce. I've seen differences where women play, especially beautiful women, use that to their advantage, and it does work. It does work, but it can backfire, and so it is a bit of a dangerous approach that if they play these kind of games or this kind of approach, if they use that. But on a professional level, I have seen excellent women, I've seen excellent men. I have seen also different negotiations between different genders. So a man sitting on one side and a woman sitting on the other side. I think if you're a true blue professional, and that was always something that I emphasized for myself, aimed for, then it shouldn't be an issue at all. Women are more emotional than men, but you know, there's no guarantee that a man has a bad day. So if you sense that, then I have had situations where I said, look, I think today is not a good day. And I kept it short and walked off. And we agreed basically to not negotiate today and have another day. So, you know, without much explanation, the losing face of somebody who obviously had a bad day. But try to keep the emotions in check. And sometimes it's necessary to just walk off. You know, if you realize that today we won't go anywhere, then say hello, let's have a coffee, let's have lunch together and talk about the family and other things, and try to de-stress, basically de-escalate the situation and meet another day.